We are getting closer and closer to the release of the King of the Hill reboot, or maybe sequel series is the better term, based on all the rumors and information swirling around. Recently, while on a press tour for her film Babes, Pamela Adlon, aka Bobby Hill herself, dropped some juicy new plot details about the upcoming King of the Hill revival, and there is some fascinating stuff in there. There's also been plenty of other tidbits revealed since we last discussed the revival on this channel, as well as the tragic loss of Johnny Hardwick, rest in peace, but we've got lots to discuss and speculate about for the brand new King of the Hill, so let's get into it. Hey, this video is brought to you by two things today. One is my official compilation channel, Johnny Too Cozy, where I'm re-editing tons of my old videos into themed compilations, long videos that are great for sleeping or drawing. And second, my wonderful patrons who get tons of extra content exclusive to Patreon. We're currently in the middle of season 2 of our BoJack Horseman audio commentaries. Check those out if they interest you. Thank you so much for your support. I couldn't do it without viewers like you. Alright, so here is the big quote from Pamela Adlon in her recent press tour that dropped tons of new details about the King of the Hill revival. We're in the second season of the reboot and Bobby is 21. He's a chef in a fusion restaurant in Dallas and it's been incredible. It's just been really fun. I think it's been freakier for Mike and Greg to think about Bobby going from 12 to being 21 and having a relationship and being a person, but don't we all go through that with our kids and our friends' kids? It is shocking when I see my friends' kids and they're all grown up and I'm like, wait a second, what just happened? So it's just a little bit of a mess. There is so much here. So they're currently recording the second season of the revival series, which tracks. We don't have confirmation for how many episodes will be run for each season of the revival, but I think looking at the other Fox adult animated series that Hulu revived is a pretty good indicator. Futurama was initially picked up for 20 episodes on Hulu, with 10 airing each year. I think we can probably expect that this is also the case for King of the Hill. All indications are that King of the Hill's first revival season will run in early 2025, and I think we can expect early 2026 for the following season. And I imagine we'll learn shortly after the first chunk of episodes air whether or not the series is renewed for additional seasons. Futurama got an additional 20 episode pickup after their first set of 10 aired last summer. But now for the juicy plot details. The obviously huge specific reveal here is that Bobby is now 21 years old and is working as a chef at a fusion restaurant in Dallas. In the original run of King of the Hill, Bobby aged from 11 to 13 over its run, so this means characters have aged around 8 years since the finale of the original series, To Sirloin with Love. This would put Hank, Peggy, Bill, Boomhauer, Dale, most of the main adults really, all at just around 50 years old. Which also means I probably shouldn't have used this illustration of Hank for my last video about the revival. I should have used this one. This would also make Luann around 29 years old and Lucky around 46 years old. However, with the deaths of Brittany Murphy and Tom Petty, it remains unclear if these characters will be used at all. And if they aren't used, it's unclear how they might be written out of the show. With the recent tragic death of Johnny Hardwick, how he is written out of the show also remains to be seen. Adlon spoke about the loss of Hardwick back in March as well.
It's hard because we lost Johnny Hardwick and he had recorded like 4 episodes and that feels really raw, but he's there with us. Like it feels like a family.
So we do have confirmation that we'll be getting at least a few episodes worth of Hardwick's final performance as Dale Gribble, and it will be great to at least have that after his untimely death. It's very hard to imagine any of these characters being recast, though obviously it isn't impossible, but it will be really interesting to see exactly how they choose to go about writing them out of the show, if that's what they decide to do. For Dale, while I do think perhaps giving the character an actual death so that we as an audience can mourn Hardwick alongside the characters, part of me thinks there's a much more Dale solution. He seems like exactly the kind of conspiracy nut who might go entirely off the grid just on a whim one day. It might be fun to have his disappearance be somewhat of a mystery to his friends in Arlen. This could actually give him a bit of a presence in the show despite the obvious absence. Speculation about his whereabouts. Maybe he occasionally does a stealthy check-in on Joseph and Nancy from afar. No dialogue, of course. They could even combine both of these ideas. If they wanted to get a bit tragically subversive, have Dale disappear and everyone gets caught up in their own Dale-esque conspiracies about where he's disappeared to, only to reveal that he has actually passed. While the loss of Hardwick is immeasurable, there are a lot of potentially poignant and interesting possibilities for how they deal with the loss. The same goes for Luann and Lucky. Personally, it would break my heart if they killed off Luann, but I hope that she can at least have some sort of a presence in the show. This time jump would put her daughter Gracie at about 8 or 9 years old. While that's maybe a bit younger than I would have anticipated if they chose to use the character, it could be cool to see Gracie move in with the Hills, just like Luann did in the very first episode of the series. I've said this in other videos, but adding more younger characters to the mix to further illustrate that generational divide that's so important to the series could work really well. This time, not only showcasing the differences between Hank and Bobby's outlooks on life, but maybe even showing how Bobby conflicts with the generation below him through characters like Gracie, or even Hank's younger brother, Good Hank. I'd really love to see how Good Hank and Bobby's relationship has evolved. I'm sure Bobby would be seen as the very cool uncle type, even though, ironically, Good Hank is his uncle. Speaking of that generational divide, I think the other pieces of information about Bobby's life in the sequel series are sort of a subtly great indicator that the new show is going to really nail that generational divide aspect. Bobby is apparently a chef at a fusion restaurant in Dallas. Obviously, the original series showcased Bobby's penchant for cooking and food in episodes like Goodbye Normal Jeans, Blood and Sauce, and even in the finale to Sirloin with Love, and this is something that Hank was immensely proud of. Something that really brought them together as father and son, like little else had. And while I fully expect that Hank would be very proud of Bobby for his accomplishments in the culinary arts, the simple details that he works at a fusion restaurant in Dallas is just enough to exacerbate those differences in their worldviews. Hank is a small town guy, and he generally likes things to be pretty straightforward. He likes his steak medium rare, grilled with the clean burning power of propane. Generally, fusion cooking is the blending of meals and ingredients from different cultures or countries into a single dish. It's possible that Bobby might be fusing some of Hank's favorite foods with foods that Hank just fully does not understand and would never even try on his own. And isn't that just sort of the perfect distillation of what King of the Hill is? Hank opening up to something he doesn't really understand because he finds an integral part of it that he actually relates to? And also, can't you just hear Hank say, "Bobby's a great chef, I just wish he'd cook more regular food"? It feels like the absolute perfect way to challenge Hank's worldview through something he loves and further build on the exact dynamic that was so important to the original series. The fact that Bobby is cooking in Dallas is also interesting. The original series indicates that Dallas is about 100 miles away from the fictional town of Arlen, which is far, but not so far that we couldn't have stories where Bobby is in Dallas and then have him pop back into Arlen to see his family. But also, Pamela seems to imply that Bobby is in a relationship in the new show as well. Obviously no specifics, but I would love to see Bobby with a new girlfriend, maybe one that Hank struggles to connect with or maybe doesn't fully approve of. With the big losses to the main original cast, I'm hopeful that the show will introduce some great new characters to help fill those voids. It's going to be really interesting to see where they place all of our favorite Arlen residents, now 9 years older than they were at the end of the original run. The world has obviously changed a lot in that time, and honestly, a series that is both able to poke fun at the differences between people while finding common ground between them is very welcomed, if you ask me. Though, I do fully expect that in today's climate, people will be upset by it. No matter what, so look forward to that. But for me, the decision to age up the characters is one that I truly embrace. For my money, few shows have maintained as high a quality run or ended on as strong of a note as King of the Hill. It wasn't always perfect, but it was always good, and To Sirloin with Love remains one of my all-time favorite series finales. By making more of a sequel series and not just King of the Hill in 2024, it helps maintain that perfect run of the original series in my mind and allows this Hulu run to be its own thing. Something that doesn't change the fact that To Sirloin with Love is a perfect ending, but also allows for them to continue to build and expand on the themes and stories from the original show in a new time period and with new angles for these beloved characters. It is pretty funny to think that Mike Judge's other hit show that made a return on Paramount Plus, Beavis and Butt-head, sort of got to have its cake and eat it too in this regard, showcasing two separate universes for different episodes, some where Beavis and Butt-head are still teenagers in modern times, and others where they've aged into crusty old men, something that obviously works a bit better for more of a straight-up comedic and gag-focused show like Beavis and Butt-head, but wouldn't really work for King of the Hill. So, for now, we can expect the King of the Hill revival to hit Hulu in early 2025. I would anticipate that we get the second revival season in early 2026, and honestly, I would probably bet money that the series gets an additional renewal shortly after the first revival season releases. This is exactly what we saw happen with Futurama over on Hulu. While 10 aired last season, we've got 10 more coming this summer, and then at least 20 more over the following 2 years, which is honestly wild. While I do have a bit of nostalgic comfort that these shows I've loved for so long are airing again, there is a bit of a sadness that these kinds of projects are so routinely being greenlit over new and original ideas. But that's also one of the reasons I'm pretty pleased with the decision for the King of the Hill revival revival to age up the characters and be something slightly new. But I am of course also very curious how you feel about these new details we've gotten about the upcoming King of the Hill revival. Would you rather the show just kept on going with the characters at the same age as when we last left off, or are you happy with the idea that we'll get to see their lives beyond the original run? Let me know below in the comments, and of course, stay tuned for more. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny two cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny two cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.